When you and at least 2 other friends took to backyard wrestling in your blissfully ignorant how did we survive youth, there were almost certainly applications of tag team moves somewhere in there. Either you and a buddy laid out someone's annoying little brother with a devastating double team, or you were the big kid's tackling dummy for their reenactment of whatever killer finish they'd recently seen on TV. There's nothing in professional wrestling quite like the tag team finisher. It's one thing to take down an enemy with a well-executed strike or maneuver, but it's altogether more awing to do so with a tandem creation. While in theory you're exerting double the power on your foe, the real fun of the tag finish is the coordination. Some of the very best moves require pristine timing, thus the execution is just as beautiful as it is brutal. Part of the argument for revitalizing tag team wrestling is the proliferation of such dazzlingly dangerous tandem finishes. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic.com, and these are the 10 best tag team finishing moves. Join us. Number 10, the Powerplex. Some of the more well-known tag team moves are of the bang bang variety, a 2-part finisher where one individual hits one move and it's immediately followed by his partner doing another. Such well-known mashups include the Hardys' Twist of Fate followed by the Swanton, and the Nasty Boys' very elementary Power Slam begets Flying Elbow Drop ending. When Hercules and Paul Roma came together as Power and Glory in 1990, they introduced the Powerplex, a simple yet mesmerizing 1-2 combo. Quite basically, Hercules would set up the victim on the turnbuckle before tagging Roma, who then ran to the nearest unoccupied buckle. With his noted strength, Hercules muscled the opponent to the mat with a superplex, just as Roma came crashing down with a perfect swan dive splash. Others have done the move since, including FTR, but the Power and Glory version stands alone just for the timing. In many cases, Roma landed on the opponent barely a split second after Hercules finished the superplex, usually earning some impressed cheers for the erstwhile heel duo. The Powerplex was the archetypal car crash finish, captivating yet brutal. Number 9, Demolition Decapitation. First of all, the name is amazing. Sounds like a ride at some really sketchy county fair, like a faulty high-liability version of bumper cars. When your individual names are Axe and Smash, your finisher has to match the shared connotation, and in a sense, perhaps the move is a bit tamer than it leads on. At the very least, it's not as flashy or as dangerous as some other moves in its peer group, but the simple brutality is there. Smash takes the designated opponent and lays them across his knee in a sort of backbreaker hold, while the 300-pound Axe comes off the middle rope with a cannonball elbow smash to the man's head, thus implying decapitation at the hands of Demolition. In an era where perhaps wrestlers take greater risks in order to impress the audience, Demolition Decapitation looks pretty safe, especially in the hands of 2 trusted pros like Axe and Smash. Still, in kayfabe, it's 2 300-pound men trying to break a man in half, using one of their knees as a pivot, and when you add in a pretty awesome name, it is a great finish. Number 8, the Shaker Heights Spike. The Beverly Brothers haven't exactly stood the test of time, a mid-card duo that never really cracked the tag team pantheon in their early 90s heyday. Together, Bo and Blake Beverly were a couple of spoon-fed snots from the upper crust city of Shaker Heights, Ohio, and weren't really much character-wise besides 2 tall blondes in matching purple tights. All they really brought to the dance was a tandem move that YouTube reaction videos are made of, especially when it goes wrong. When executed correctly, the Shaker Heights Spike is lethal enough. The opponent gets sent to the ropes, Blake alley-oops them on the rebound, and Bo snatches them at their peak, bringing them down hard with a face-first slam. While many foes have taken it correctly, others have erred, leading to some truly horrifying incidents. There was one enhancement talent in 1993 that inadvertently tried to cut a flip in midair, that or Blake didn't boost him cleanly, and Bo just spiked him as was, resulting in the poor bastard javelining headfirst into the canvas. Whether done right or not, the spike was a jaw-dropping finish, one we're probably not likely to see again. Number 7, the Meltzer Driver. When good old Uncle Dave began punching up those newsletters in the early 80s, he probably never envisioned that there were 2 brothers who weren't even born yet that would not only become star wrestlers, but go so far as to name a tag team finish in his honor. Matt and Nick Jackson have changed the wrestling industry through their unique blend of showiness, irreverence, and clever marketing, and each quality is evident in the Meltzer Driver. When they're not dispensing super kicks in rapid-fire fashion, the Young Bucks are using their opponent as a flagpole, exerting extra force to to plant the tip into the ground. Brother Matt flips the opponent up into the tombstone hold, and Nick springboards from the apron, cutting a 360 flip as he flies into the upside down opponent, and together the siblings spike the recipients. The move is an improvement on what's known as the Indie Taker, which is the same move but done without the flip. It is a 5-star finish, but overdone joke alert, it could be 6 stars, depending on which continent it's performed in. Number 6, the Steiner DDT. There's not really a fancy name for this particular finish, but proper titles are immaterial if you happen to be one of the Steiner's opponents. No wrestlers have ever made more of a sport out of mangling jobbers like Rick and Scott Steiner have, between the bevy of suplexes and strikes, as well as the occasional spine-jolting Steiner screwdriver. For the coup de grace, the brothers often had Scott elevate an opponent onto his shoulders so that Rick could bulldog him off from the top rope. That said, if they were feeling extra sadistic, they'd use the DDT variants. Here, Rick would be the hoisting half of the duo, while Scott would head to the top rope. As Rick stood by the ropes, Scott would grab the seated opponent in a front facelock and fall backwards from the turnbuckles, hitting a DDT that may as well have been a life-altering brainbuster. A garden variety DDT is generally a match ender in ideal circumstances, but one from a greater height has far less margin for error. Theoretically, the Steiner DDT should require a stretcher job for the victim. Well, actually, so should most of the moves in their arsenal. Number 5, the Shatter Machine. In terms of tag team finishers that have lethal sounding names, allow us to go from Axe and Smash to Dax and Cash. When FTR were busy trying to revive the art of tag team wrestling under the WWE umbrella, they proved that they were masters of their craft, indicating a possible genetic link between the two and Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard. And like any great tag team worthy of top accolades, the former Scott Dawson and Dash Wilder needed perfect punctuation. Enter the Shatter Machine, a double leg lift on the part of Dax Harwood, immediately dropping into a waiting Cash Wheeler, who, depending on placement, either blows out the opponent's lungs with his 2 knees, or instead crushes their face. In either case, it is a rocky landing for whomever takes it, and its sudden execution, enhanced by FTR's collective ring awareness, makes it an ideal tide turner. FTR doesn't have to be in firm control in order to bust it out. Post-WWE, the move has since been renamed the Goodnight Express because Dax and Cash, more than anyone, appreciate the history of tag team wrestling. Number 4, Total Elimination. There are 7 syllables in the name, yet commentator Joey Styles could somehow always get it to about 3 or 4 whenever he screamed its name. To elimination! And his exclamation was usually appropriate, since the person taking the move was generally folded up like an accordion after impact. The Eliminators, Perry Saturn and John Kronus, were innovative heavyweights on an ECW landscape that valued the unconventional and the brutal, and Total Elimination more than qualified as both. The move required very little setup outside of specific placements. With the opponent stunned, Kronus stood shoulder to shoulder with them on one side and Saturn on the other. After a quick beat to get on the same page, Kronus would wallop the victim with a spinning roundhouse kick to the face, while Saturn simultaneously went low, sweeping their legs with a wild roundhouse to the calves. We've seen other teams use variants of the high-low strike, like the Ascension's Fall of Man, or even Lance Cade and Trevor Murdoch's sweet and sour clothesline chop block combo, but none possess the lethal suddenness of dueling spin kicks to the face and legs, making Total Elimination a rather fitting name. Number 3, the Spike Piledriver. Textbook, yet timeless. In an age where move sequences became more choreographed and convoluted than a Rube Goldberg invention, a simple pile driver isn't as fearsome as it once was. In another time, overturning an opponent and forcibly spiking their head into the mat was akin to attempted murder, and in some territories, doing the move was grounds for a disqualification. All this emphasis on the danger of the neck-compressing pile driver only drew more gasps when some foul cretin spitefully did it anyway. So imagine the horror of the fearsome pile driver with another wrestler assisting with the spike. Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard may be the most famous co-practitioners of the spike pile driver, using it as their finish across several promotions in the latter half of the 80s. While you can do it with both attackers standing on the same solid ground, it's enhanced by one team member, Blanchard in this case, jumping off the buckles with a sizable leap, putting some extra jam into the move. While not as glitzy as a move like the Meltzer Driver, the simplicity of the move is its genius, so basic, yet so punishing. Number 2, the Dudley Death Drop. Too many syllables there in the eyes of most fans. Most prefer to call this move by its alliterative initials, first the quantity and then the common letter. In fact, most do openly call for it when they see Devon and Bubba Ray take their familiar places near a staggering opponent. The low roar of 3D can be heard throughout the arena. That's the mark of an effective finish, when its mere telegraph provokes a group response. You've seen the 3D plenty through the years. Like the Shatter Machine, it begins with a double leg lift as Devon sends the opponent soaring. But not for long, as what goes up must come down, and there's Bubba waiting to snap their neck with an ace crusher. Sometimes the Dudleys will even combine their two loves, putting a table as a buffer between them so that when somebody takes the 3D, lumbar meets their ribcage at the same time Bubba kinks their cervical region. The Dudley Death Drop is a timeless maneuver, and it's easily amongst the top innovations to ever come out of ECW. Number 1. The Doomsday Device. When an older fan proclaims that things were better in their day, they may be spouting off with rose-tinted glasses on. But when they're talking about the Doomsday Device being the greatest tag team finish ever, it's subjective, but it's also pretty hard to argue against. Road Warriors Animal and Hawk burst onto the scene in the early to mid-80s, representing a jarring evolution in the look and demeanor of a pro wrestler. That their finish mirrored their macabre presentation only made sense. The Doomsday Device is simple enough. Animal puts the casualty to be on his shoulder, and Hawk lunges off the top rope with a diving clothesline, resulting in the opponent cutting a blind flip to the mat from an elevated position. A number of wrestlers were legitimately terrified to take the device, and Animal has stated that if you ever saw he or Hawk pin somebody with any other move in a Warriors match, it was in deference to the opponent's fear. That note actually enhances the aura of the Doomsday Device. It looks awesome, it looks painful, it scares the hell out of their opponents, and it's befitting of two legendary brutes like the Road Warriors.